Hey guys, Indy here with Ultimate Tool Reviews. Well, there's actually a few things I'm going to try to cover in this video today. So we've got a couple impact drivers here in front of me, and they are all totally different impact drivers. If you look at the Metabo HPT here, I know I've talked about the Metabo 18 volt in the past. I wasn't super impressed with it. And the fact that it kind of lacked a bit of power. It was a fantastic value, great warranty, great price, but I felt it lacked a bit of power compared to similar price Makitas and Milwaukees. So what I did was I got rid of the 18 volt, I picked up the 36 volt, and I do want to pick up the new 36 volt bolt, which is their new Gen 2, whenever I can find a good deal on that. So this is the 36 volt Metabo triple hammer. This is the previous gen, the Gen 1. And we're going to test this out today, kind of comparing it against the Milwaukee M18 Fuel Surge. So you see a lot of the Surges out there, and yes, I know Makita makes an oil impact, but you can pick up the Surge relatively cheap. There's a lot of those out there. I got this Metabo and this Surge here for about 50 bucks each on eBay. And they're pretty much the same condition, very similar build dates. Super similar here, and I've got every impact here on a 5 amp hour battery that is fully charged. Now I've got the Makita here. It's just going to kind of be a baseline, just a regular 2-hammer impact. It's going to be right around the same price. This is the Makita XDT13. It has no modes of adjustment here, unlike the Milwaukee and the Metabo, which both have some modes of adjustment. So, of course, if we look at, who's going to win in a speed test, it's probably going to be the Makita or the Metabo. We all know that the Milwaukee is not the fastest impact driver. It's easily the weakest impact driver out of all of these three. But that's not what I'm trying to test today. I'm not trying to test which one's the fastest. I'd like to see which one is going to be the most comfortable to use in a more precise scenario. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a couple of regular deck screws using a T25 bit, and I'm going to put these in nice and slow, and I'm going to see which one gives me the most control over putting in that screw. So when you're looking at, buying an impact driver like the M18 Fuel Surge, you're looking for something that's going to be more precise, on the quieter side, and very easy to control. When it comes to the things like triple hammer Metabo impacts, that's what I kind of think of when I think of the Metabos. I'm not thinking about a ton of power. I'm thinking about more of that control side, more of that precision. There's been a few things with, the Metabo HPT triple hammers. Torque Test channel did a really cool video showing that as the Metabo, when you actually increase the amount of load on that triple hammer, it's actually going to start skipping impacts, which is not a good thing. It's going to give you less power the harder you push the impact driver. Now, that's not necessarily going to be, overall a really bad thing. Of course, everyone else uses just 2 hammers, but I see that more as a thing that is useful when it comes to driving in screws at a more precise control level at a lower speed. So I don't want to explain that too much, but we'll kind of get into that as we start getting some of these tools working. So let's start out with the Metabo, and let's go from there. All right, so I've got the Metabo here. This is the multi-volt battery. This is the 2.5 amp hour at 36 volt or the 5 amp hour at 18 volt. Basically the equivalent battery to the other impacts. I've got a Bosch T25 bit in this impact here. And unfortunately, the Metabo doesn't have that quick insert. You gotta basically, open that collet and push it in. All right, so the Metabo also has, and this isn't my favorite thing, but these settings are going to be on the side here. So click the trigger once and it gives you the settings. You've got S and P, also 2 red little LEDs there kind of show you different modes to set there. On the front here, we also have a couple of LED light adjustments between on or on off, which on basically just means to keep that light on, where on off means that it'll turn off automatically with the trigger not being pressed. So let's drive in a screw here, and I'm gonna do this in a really controlled, slow manner so that you can see how well this thing does. All right, so if you notice right now, I got the screw in, no big deal. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it nice and slow, and we're gonna see how far down it takes before it starts impacting. So let's see here. All right. right, so just start impacting right there. We're nearly all the way in without any impacts. It's got a good amount of torque here, definitely more than the 18 volt, I can tell, when it comes to torque. Now, I want to say that in a fair way because, you know, I only had the 3 amp hour batteries when I used the 18 volt. Of course, you know, a much larger battery, it's able to use 36 volts. Now, these are very similar impacts, the 18 volt, in the fact that there's only just a little bit more power out of these things. But, you know, overall, when it comes to torque, I do think there's a bit of a difference there. So let's finish driving this thing all the way in. Now, notice how the impacts are happening here with that triple hammer. You can see how much it's driving that screw with each impact. And let me zoom in here and let's look at that really closely here as we're driving that in with those impacts. That's one thing I like about that triple hammer is that it really allows you to kind of dial in just how much impact you have there. Now, it's not necessarily, you know, a really powerful impact because there's not as much, you know, distance for that hammer to travel before it hits that anvil inside that hammer. But it allows you to get a really nice, very controlled, it does feel very similar to an oil impact to me with, of course, a little bit more noise. So let's take this out and I'll do the exact same way, take it out nice and slow, and we'll try the Milwaukee next after this. So we'll take it out nice and slow here. It should start impacting right away. It's gonna be a little more too much torque for it to just take it out with a motor alone, but let's see how it does. And really good trigger feel on that Metabo. The trigger is very sensitive. I can control that screw coming out very nicely. That's a really big thing I look for when it comes to impact drivers, is you never know what you're gonna be doing, you know, one day. You might be taking out, you know, some smaller screws, you may work on something smaller, something bigger. You kind of want an impact driver that's gonna give you a lot of versatility, while at the same time, you know, keeping it quiet, keeping it accurate, not overdriving screws, not, you know, pulling screws out so fast that they're, you're just gonna fly out and you can't grab them fast enough. So let's try out the Milwaukee and see how that compares to the Metabo. So this is the Milwaukee Fuel. I'm going to have this set on speed 3, the same as I've had on the Metabo, basically on its highest speed. Now on the Milwaukee, it does have a quick insert collet, which is really nice to have. Now on the oil impacts, they're designed to be a lot quieter. One thing though that a lot of people are wondering about though is, you know, why did Milwaukee and Makita only make one generation for the most part of oil impacts? That's a great question. I love to know that. I'm curious if they don't, you know, maybe not sell enough of them, or maybe they've kind of maxed out the technology so far that there's not really much else to put into these to make them more powerful, make them lighter, make them smaller, make them better. You know, my guess is kind of good as yours. If you guys know or have any insight on that, let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious as to that one and why, you know, there's not a second generation of these out just yet. So let's do the exact same thing with the Metabo. Let's get this thing started and we'll go from there. All right, there we go. I've got it started now. And let's do the exact same thing with the Metabo. I'm gonna go in nice and slow, and we're gonna see how far it takes to get to that impact, to get those impacts started here. So let's start. Oh wow, that is really quick. You can tell that it's not relying on the motor very fast here. It's going pretty much right to impacts. Let me pull this out for a little bit. I'm gonna just see that motor again. Remember, we are in speed 3 here. And let's try this again just to see how much, you know, motor versus the hammer it's gonna, you know, kind of be able to go down with just the motor versus starting to impact. And it's pretty quick here. There we go, pretty much almost right away it goes right to impacting, but notice how quiet that is on this impact driver. And let me zoom in here just a little bit. We'll get some more detail on that impact. What's cool about the oil impact driver is that it gives you a ton of control here. Notice when I'm gonna pull down harder on this impact driver, and then I slow down. Notice how many impacts it's happening as I make a rotation. I can very, very accurately control how fast and how much impacts are happening on that fastener. So let me drive this all the way down and really pay close attention to that screw as I'm impacting it down on it. It's got a ton of control there. I can pretty much almost like with a screwdriver be able to, get accuracy with this impact driver. It is very, very accurate of an impact driver. Of course, I can feel the power difference right away between the triple hammer and the oil impact. Whereas that triple hammer here, and let me do that one more time. I'm gonna pull this screw out here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this screw right back in and just notice how fast, or sorry, maybe how slow it takes to switch from just the motor alone to going to start impacts. So let's see here. So I'm still on motor here, and there we go, there's our impact starting right there. Once it gets to a certain level of resistance, it's gonna start impacting, and then that motor is gonna just be focusing on powering those impacts. I'm gonna pull this out again. I'm gonna try this one more time. Let's see how it does. Now, if you notice, it's a little bit different there on that second attempt. It's all depending on how much I pull down that trigger. So if I'm doing it really slow, it's gonna go to impacts a lot faster. Whereas if I'm doing more of a medium trigger pull there, it's gonna be able to use that motor power a bit more, and it's gonna get to me about there, which is gonna be about, maybe somewhere between a 1/4 inch or so there of the screw being out, whereas the surge is gonna give me impacts a lot sooner when I drive that screw in. Let's try this again. Yep, I'm starting impacts pretty much almost immediately as I get resistance with the surge. So that's really important to note whenever you're using something like the Milwaukee M18 fuel surge, it's gonna go to impacts very quickly. Now those impacts are gonna be very light, they're gonna be very gentle, I think is the best word to describe the M18 fuel surge's impacts. They're not going to be, kind of violent. They're going to be very quiet, very controlled, very gentle impacts, which is really cool. So depending on, what you're doing, lighter fasteners, it's going to be very similar to, say, almost like a screwdriver, like the powered screwdrivers. A lot of brands make those. The surge is a very, very unique tool in the fact that how it drives those screws down. Very interesting. Now, I do have the Makita here as kind of just a baseline. This is going to be, the regular 2-hammer impact driver. So let's drive a screw in with this, and let's see how it does compared to the Metabo and the Milwaukee. Now, do you notice that difference in the volume or just how loud those impacts are in these 2-hammer impacts? Of course, you're going to gain a bit more power, but you're gaining a much more violent and louder impact. So that may not be, what everyone wants in an impact driver. So let's drive this thing all the way in and let's listen to the impacts in this. Now, notice there how it basically drove that screw in so fast, I couldn't really control that. And notice how I drove it in too far on accident there. Now, on this impact driver, there is no modes for me to control here, so I can't put it into a speed 1 or speed 2. It's basically just going to be entirely finger control there. So let's pull this thing out, and I'm going to try that one more time. All right, let's try it right there, and let's see here. All right, pretty quick, I'm getting the impacts now, but let me try it and see how well I can actually put that screw in without going too far. Let me try to see how well I can do here. Okay, there we go. Not terribly difficult, but it is a lot more difficult than using, say, like a triple hammer or the M18 fuel surge. A bit of a difference there you can definitely tell in the amount of vibration I'm getting. Yes, it has more power, but it's definitely lacking the amount of control you're going to get from something like the M18 Fuel Surge or the Metabo HPT Triple Hammer. Now, this is where, I like to talk about, everyone's comparing tools when it comes to, just power. You see, a lot of the guys hold up 2 tools, they drive 2 screws in, and whoever gets in the fastest is the winner. And, that's great and all, but, if you're going out to buy a new car, you're not buying the car just entirely on which one gets 0 to 60 faster. There's a lot of other options there, comfort, features, reliability. There's so many different things out there that really make tools quite different and one tool better than the other tool. So when it comes to impact drivers, there's a reason why, I like to buy impact drivers with more modes. I like, something like the M18 Fuel Surge. The Metabo Triple Hammer is definitely in a league of its own with that Triple Hammer. There's lots of factors to consider here, guys. So if you look at the comparison between these 3, they all have their, great uses for what they can do. And, the feature set, I haven't got into that at all just yet when it comes to features between these 3 impact drivers. But, there's a lot to unpack here between these 3 tools, more so than just, the amount of power and speed these tools have. So, guys, when it comes to, when you want to buy a new tool, really look at what you're going to be doing with it. And, look at, things like noise level, level of control, and not just brand, of course, but look at, some of the features you might need. I will say I bought this off eBay. And, it came in actually pretty dirty, and that's probably why I got it so cheap for only about $50 off eBay. But if you know what I did with it was, when I got it in, I took it in my kitchen sink, and I just, washed it down with soap and water, and that's it. It's IPJ6 rated. That's what Metabo shows and advertisements for, and it works just fine. So it's got some really cool features when it comes to, things like that almost near waterproof rating. M18 Fuel Surge is really precise. It's really, really quiet, but you compare to that Makita, it's going to be an amazing tool. So lots of things to consider here, guys. I'm trying to keep, all 3 of these kind of in that same price point. So just to review, guys, this is the Metabo HPT. This is a 36 volt one. Got this thing for used about $50. This is the M18 Fuel Surge. Again, you can find these really cheap on eBay. They're not the most popular impact drivers, of course, because they don't really win a lot of those, speed battles. That's just, a common thing with the oil impacts, but they really do have an awesome use on their own. And then just to throw us into the mix for as a baseline, this is just the Makita XTT13. So guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you kind of, took something out of this video that shows, it's not all about power when it comes to impact drivers. There's different types of impact drivers that do different types of things really well. And when it comes to impact drivers for me, I would look for an impact driver that can really be able to fine tune and allow me to drive a screw in very accurately and precisely at the same time. I'm not just looking for raw power. If I'm looking for raw power, I might just buy an impact wrench for most of the time. Or I'm going to probably just buy, maybe the top-end Makita, top-end Milwaukee. There's lots of options out there. Just, get a really powerful impact driver. And, it's kind of really going to depend on what you're doing with the impact driver. That'll make the biggest difference. So, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. And leave a comment below if you got any questions. And take care, guys. Have a good evening.